Good morning, it's Sunday morning, March 6th, 2022. And today we are going to talk about using your printer to make your own digital prints. I really hope you guys can see this. There's not going to be much demonstrating this week because I just changed all my printer ink and I have full printer tanks. But we're going to find out as we go through this stack of examples what happens when your tanks start to fail. You know you need extra, or you know you need more ink, and what do you do about that? Because, you know, you can't order ink for a week. We'll get to that. So, how can you use your printer to create digital prints and papers and backgrounds for any junk journal you want to make, any travel folio you want to make, and any gift you might want to make in book form? Well, you can certainly find lots of digital prints. Let me see if I can get this squared up a little bit. I just might have made it worse. Okay, you can certainly find a lot of digital prints. And so here are some examples. Whenever I find a digital print, and I mostly use free ones because I've found that I like making my own a lot better than using somebody else's, I will make a master print. The first print that comes off the printer is my master print, so I have a reference. And then, often as not, I will make a black and white master print because, let's face it, this whole side right here would make a very nice background for a book tag or a book page or what have you. But sometimes, I hope you can see this, sometimes your printer is running out of ink. That's okay. We're gonna cope with that. You can find all kinds of prints and papers out there on the web. You do not have to pay for them, but I'm not going to tell you not to pay for one if you find what you need in somebody's Etsy shop or what have you. This is strictly free stuff that I'm showing you, either stuff that I've made or stuff that I've used that was in a free site. Music paper, for sure, you can use. And I have two examples. I have one on white, and I have one that was printed on this sort of khaki color. For sure, you've seen me do this before. This is the black and white copy of the book jacket where I just used my scrapbook paper that I had bought. I treated myself to a 12 by 12 pack. I made a reference print so that I can use the black and white image. Now we're getting into something a little more complex or sophisticated. You can make your own master boards and master sheets. I've mentioned them before. You can certainly make your own. This is a collage I made last year when I really wasn't sure where I was going with all this junk journal stuff. And it's book pages, it's part of a census form, some words, a little banner made out of a piece of graph paper, and I edged it, and then I put a stamp on there. All this stuff got glued down to an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, and then I made a photocopy. And this is a working copy. This is not a master copy. You've seen this before, but here's where the printer started failing. It didn't print the rest of the sheet, but all this was book pages where I took the torn edges as the leading edges up to a certain point, or maybe all the way. No, I staggered them. So torn edge, and this is just the margin, torn edge, and then I turned and put the torn edge the other way. The white you see in here, as I've said before, was just the paper showing through, and this makes a nice neutral background. It's not too busy on the eye, but it does show that there's something behind whatever you put on the page. Here's another one I did, and you can see where I smeared it because I didn't let the ink dry. Well, you can print, this is the same one, you can print on colored paper, but the results might be somewhat disappointing. I'm not crazy about this, but there's always a chance I'll use it. So sometimes mistakes are made. This is a jelly print, and it's made with acrylic paint on a jelly plate. So this is contact printing. This might have been a second print because I think the colors were a little more vibrant. But when I photocopied it, it muted it down, and I like this very much as a background. This, we are not going to do this week, but I did show examples of it last year. This is nothing more than a piece of typing paper where I edged, and I wasn't very careful, and I smeared the ink. I didn't even have a blending brush, I don't think, but I managed to shade it, you know, in from the edges. Then I took beeswax and sprinkled little beeswax pellets on this and ironed it. And it made this wonderful wax-coated paper. This is one of my favorite paper treatments, but I will tell you that it doesn't glue down with PVA liquid glue. You have to find a good glue that will grip both your bottom surface and this. And I may have found one, but that's an experiment, you know, down the road a little bit. What happens when your printer starts failing? Well, here's a partial print where you can see, maybe, I hope, you can see the printer lines, you know, because I was losing ink in my tank. But I kept this because this doesn't bother me. This can be used in a journal with a color theme of lavender or scarlet or what have you. So I don't get too upset anymore. And here is an even more extreme example. This is a master page. It was actually 8.5 by 11, and I cut part of it off for something. Sorry, I just bumped the camera. But you can see, hopefully, there's blue ink here, and there's lavender ink here, and it is not, you know, the original colors. The original colors were, you know, book pages, and this monarch butterfly is yellow. So, keep that stuff. I even have, do I have one to hand? I do. I even have purple bees. Now, purple is not one of my favorite colors, but I will use it. I definitely will use it. I kept my purple bees. I had a whole sheet or maybe 2 sheets of them, and I'll use them. So I don't get too upset or disappointed when my ink tanks are going low and I'm getting funky colors. I just live with it. Now, this is what I showed you last week. It actually was oriented this way, and right in here was a huge black ink blob, and you can see other ink blobs of black in here. There's something, my printer is just not long for this world. So on this paper, this is a photocopy of a stencil on tissue paper, I think. And this is just dye ink that I went over my stencil with. I love this stencil, but it's so delicate. These parts are so delicate that you really have to be careful and patient. You have to be in the right frame of mind to be careful and patient. And, you know, then the printer leaves you big blobs. So, not to worry. We don't get upset about these things. We set it aside and we say, what other way can I use it? Well, I was starting to get quite a little tub of small scraps. And I thought, well, I'll just throw down some small scraps and cover it. So I did, but I wanted those gears to show through. Here's a photocopy, and I'm still getting these ink blobs, but that's not so as bad as was on the original. The photocopy makes all of the paper lay down nice and flat, and it mutes the tones just a little bit. Well, what if I really like this print, but I want to mute the tones even more. Then I'll print it on tracing paper. And as you can see, on a white background, it's very, you can still tell what it is, but it's very muted. Let's use a book page and see what it looks like on a book with a book page in the background. You can still see the book page, right? You can still clearly see the book page, but it has this, you know, sort of vague pattern. So there's our book page, shows through. Here's our accordion thing. And of course this would have to be actually bigger. But you get the idea. You've got the same color families throughout. Greens, khaki, a little bit of brown edging. There's your khaki there. There's that, a piece of that photocopy of my scrapbook pages. So these are the kind of things you can do with your printer. For those of you still gathering supplies, if you couldn't find metal rulers, I found a set similar to the one that I bought, and right now it is $8.99 on Amazon. I will leave you a link in show notes. So how much have we spent so far in the 4 episodes from the Papercraft all the way to today? Well, assuming you bought everything, you got a book, you got glue, and you decided to buy glue sticks as well, scissors, a pack of darning needles, dental floss, elastic cord, tracing paper, a ream of printer paper, a metal ruler, a straight blade, you know, a craft knife, the silicone glue by Beacon. We would have spent $55.46, and the only things that we did not get at the dollar store are paper and silicone glue and elastic cord. If we didn't buy the glue, the ream of paper, the metal ruler, and not including tax and shipping, assuming you just went to the dollar store or Goodwill for everything, we've only spent $20.49 in about 6 weeks, because the first episode was sort of a standalone episode in January. So this is a beautiful botanical example of ferns, and you can't see it, but on the bottom it actually has the Latin name and all that information. The next one is iris, and it also has the botanical names and all the botanical information on the bottom. I printed 2 of these out because I could just very easily fold this in half very carefully and use it as a folio cover in a journal, or I could cut them and use them as pages. The next one, let me zoom in on this because it's a little hard to see. The next one is a botanical print of almond flowers, and you can see it has a very commercial look in the print quality. And let's see, we got this, nope, other way. And then the last one, I took the plunge and I printed a photo. And this photo, I did it on maximum quality, although the print itself is very impressionistic. I'll zoom in and maybe you could see what I'm talking about. See up there on the ears, ink pooled. Have we got good focus? Maybe not. Well, you can tell on the ears that right in there, the ink pooled, and that may be a function of the printer, it may be a function of the paper. I have had this photo paper probably for 3 or 4 years, 3 years for sure.
There's another thing you can do, and that's print on dyed paper, and that's what we're going to do next week. But hold your screenshots for just a second. This is birds. I printed it out 4 times on the same blue paper. This is a sepia paper that has speckles in it. It was a happy accident, and I'm going to pop up a close-up so that you can see the paper that we fed into the printer plus the actual print that we printed. Now, if you don't have enough sepia in your sepia print it on sepia tone paper. And here's our screenshot for next week. We're going to do paper dyeing. We're going to do it 2 different ways. Either you can use 50% alcohol. I know I said 90% up there, but you can go as low as 50% alcohol and children's watercolor markers, or you can do the water and food coloring dye with us. I'm going to demonstrate both, but you can choose one or the other if that's your preference. For sure, with the alcohol and children's markers, I'm going to do 3 colors, red, green, and blue, because you can always make other colors with those. And for those, you will need either 3 or 5 soda bottles, depending on if you choose to mix colors. And those soda bottles are to soak the nibs from the markers. For the food coloring, you might want to have a couple of soda bottles to store your dye in, because whatever you have left over, you can certainly reuse again. You'll need a couple of shallow pans. 9 by 13 will accommodate 8.5 by 11 paper for sure. Also, if you choose, you can store your dye in little 4-ounce spray bottles, and you can spray your dye. The hard part's over. It's going to get a lot easier and a lot more fun. Shout out to the new subscribers. Glad to have you. Thanks for joining me. See you real soon.